Meeting of the Oregon City Planning Commission. First item on our agenda is public comment on any item that is not on our agenda. Are there any public comments?
There are not.
There are not? Okay, then we will move on to item number 1, which is a request for continuance to December 14th, 2020 for GOUA 20-00020, 30-bed residential memory care facility on Warner Parrott Road. The public record is still open. Ms. Turway, do you have anything on this?
It'll be me, and we are requesting a continuance for planning file GLUA 2020, CU 2002, SB 2043. We're requesting a continuance to a date certain of December 14th, 2020. And we do have a couple people here in person and a few people on Zoom wishing to provide testimony on this one.
Okay, so they're wanting to testify this evening?
Yes.
All right, the public record is still open, so is the city attorney in the room?
No.
Do we need to go through the disclosures again? I think we do.
I think there's new names.
You don't have to do the full disclosures. You can just ask if there's been any updates.
Okay.
You don't really have to do this disclosure since we're not opening up the whole thing. It's your choice.
Oh, because we're only going to hear testimony. We're not going to make any comment this evening. Okay, then let's do that. We'll restrict ourselves to just hearing the public comment. So let's go ahead with that.
So first we have Jerry Yarberry.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to appear before the Planning Commission again. And I realize that continuance has been requested. And I wanted to just kind of consolidate a couple of thoughts from some of the neighbors that we've had meetings over the last 2 weeks in anticipation of tonight's meeting. As I take a look at the conditional use proposal, there's a couple of things that come to mind. And the first is I'd really urge the commissioners, and I know that you're volunteers and you've got a full schedule as we all do, but really drive through the neighborhood. Take a look at the houses in the neighborhood. It's a residential area. And take a look at the traffic flow on Warner Parrott. Take a look at the driveways next to the proposal. There's 2 of them that would be adversely affected by the increased traffic in that area. And I know too from the notes that have been presented that they're looking at some other changes in the proposal, and that's why they're asking for another continuance on this. But I think that if you take a look closely, what you'll find is that on 1756-040, one of the criteria for conditional use is, would it adversely affect adjacent residential properties? And indeed it would. I think if you take a close look at the driveways immediately to both sides of it, you'll see that it would. Additionally, the proposed use will alter the surrounding area, the character of the surrounding area in a manner that would substantially impair the property's primary uses. And that too is one of the conditions of a conditional use permit. If you take a look at the residences around there, it is a residential area. And if you then take a look at the proposed drawings of the building that they are proposing, it's a commercial building. It does not fit in the neighborhood. So I wanted to appear before you in person tonight, primarily to just kind of restate those 3 points. It's in your purview to grant or recommend the conditional use permit or not. And I think that if you take a look at it, as all of the adjacent neighbors have, it doesn't fit. It's going to cause traffic issues. It's going to cause parking issues. And it really doesn't meet the criteria of a conditional use permit. So that's what I wanted to bring up tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for taking the time to come in. That's always nice to see a face in the audience.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Next, we have William Gifford.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, my name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. There's a lot of other things I'd rather be doing right now. But I've been watching this particular, I was going to say action, but more like lack of action for the last several weeks. And to see this can kick down the road for another 2 weeks or so concerns me that there may not be a real appreciation of the fact that time is money. That the applicants have made a significant investment, have made modifications to the plans already, and the fact that that is being further delayed, to me is, I think it's unfortunate, and I think it should be avoidable. I don't understand why the continuance was made. There was, did the applicant request the continuance so that they could change their plans to accommodate the neighbors?
I don't know.
Yeah, and.
Because we haven't made any continuance, the
We haven't
applicant has.
requested any.
Yeah, it's the applicant that keeps doing it.
Yeah.
And as my understanding is, the applicant has not been informed of, they were not informed that they should have been here at the last meeting to have an opportunity to rebut the comments. I think that there's a lack of communication going on. I hope that you all have driven by the property and looked at the property next door, which comes directly to the curb. I know that traffic studies have already been done by the applicant. Those are not free. The additional parking concerns, I think that you realize that the 30 residents are not going to be driving a lot. This is an assisted living facility. These people aren't driving in and out. There's going to be staff there, of course. But I don't think that that staff is going to make a significant impact on the neighborhood. I think that if you look at that neighborhood, if you look at that street, it's not really a back street. It's a main thoroughfare. I understand it's only 30 miles an hour, and I never go over 30 miles an hour on that. But I just cannot imagine that this commercial institution would be out of place in that neighborhood. Considering what is around the corner, there are other facilities around the corner. I think that this is in character with the neighborhood, and I think everything is being done to ameliorate some of the concerns of some of the immediate neighbors, which I think are unfounded. I drive that neighborhood a lot, and I think that that particular application is very suitable. The other thing to consider is that I think what the applicant is asking for is perfectly legal. What the applicant is asking for is certainly within code. They are not doing anything outside of code. The conditions of approval are all, as I understand, acceptable to the applicant. There is no reason this should not be proceeding. There are some people that will be opposed to any change in their neighborhood. There's a label for that. I don't want to say NIMBY, so I'll just spell it out. I really feel that there is not a justifiable reason to grant this application with its conditions of approval and get on with it. I think that you can tell that I'm a little frustrated with the process. I don't own any property. That's not going to, it's not, I have no fiduciary interest in this whatsoever. But I think that I'm concerned about the process, and the process seems to me interminable.
William, if I can ask you a question. Since we've not done any continuance, it's been on the part of the applicant, can I ask what your interest is here, or why you were thinking that they
My
weren't
interest is in the
communicating?
process, Commissioner. My interest is in the process of how long it takes to get things done in this city. And the fact that we are driving people out of this city. I know other people that are literally moving out of Oregon City to develop in other areas, to go down to Canby where they can get things done, to invest in our community has almost become a joke. And it concerns me.
Okay, Mr. Gifford, we get the point. Thank you. But I don't think it's necessarily proper to blame the process when the applicant is the one who is asking for the delay, is asking for the continuance.
Understood, thank you.
But thank you for your comments.
Laura, can I ask you a question? William brought up something that wasn't communicated to the applicant to be here at the last meeting. Is that so? Is there a miscommunication there somewhere?
I know this looks very bad for me to say, but I would request that we don't have communications about this, since we didn't do this disclosure at the beginning, that we just hear testimony and then we can talk about it next time, if that's okay.
Okay, just was wondering before I forget it.
Yeah, no, I will make a note to make sure that we include that the next time.
Okay.
Or when we have a hearing. Thank you.
Okay, is there additional public comment?
Yes, next we have Mrs. Winters, who is joining us from Zoom.
Was she
You
before?
need to unmute yourself.
Is she on here somewhere?
I think I saw that.
Is she the Grammy on there?
No.
Down here, this one here, green.
Oh, I can't read this.
There she is.
We live directly right behind the property, east of the property. Our fence separates the two of us. And basically, Jerry pretty much answered or spoke all of the questions that I was going to say. And just really quick reference to the man that was just talking as far as the buildings that he says that are around the corner from us. There is one adult care home, but it's very small and it's one level, and it's you know, it's not 2 stories high looking right into someone's backyard. So, and as far as I remember, maybe I'm wrong, but the applicants were at the last meeting.
No.
They did speak. No, they were not?
No.
Okay, well, I know them, and we see them all the time, so, okay. Thank you, that's it.
All right.
Mike,
Thank you.
I have a question, Mike.
Okay, but let's be careful. We don't want to get into a discussion tonight. But
Right.
Go ahead.
Another thing we should add to the discussion on the next time we meet is who requested the continuance. And I don't think it's been properly stated tonight, but that's my recollection. Anyways, we can talk about it next time, I suppose.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Turway, can you make sure at the next meeting that we get the history of there's been 2 continuances now, every continuance, who requested it?
I will, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, next we have Grammy.
Yes, sorry, but that's the Zoom name I use with my grandchildren. Actually, my name is Marilyn Fergus. I'm Amy Wilhite's mother. I live 2 doors west of the proposed thing, and I would like to respond very briefly to Mr. Gifford's comments. It's really different to hear a comment from somebody who doesn't live in the neighborhood as opposed to somebody who does. So that's all I will say about that. One of the things on the continuance that was brought to my attention was that the applicant has mentioned that they would have parking from the Methodist Church, and I want that as public record. That is 1 block west, 2 blocks south on South End Road. There are not sidewalks on the same side all the way as the Methodist Church. And nobody that brings their loved one to the facility is going to walk 3 blocks uphill to get to this facility. And Mr. Gifford said he didn't see how it would impact the traffic. Well, if you would drive down the street, you'll notice how many of the people on this street park with the front end of their cars out because they can't back out onto Warner Parrott. And the parking, the fact that I want it reminded that the parking on the north side of the street is a bike lane and they are not allowed, neighbors are not allowed to park on the north side of the street, only on the south side of the street. I think that's enough. I will be at the next meeting. But I wanted to thank the commissioners for taking the time to have all this public input. We did not ask for the continuance except for the very first one. But I want to thank you for taking your time, especially during a holiday season, to be here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Just confirming, John Keese, you are still listening in, and confirming you don't have any comments on this one.
That is correct.
Thank you. And we do have one other person that joined after we started. Mark and Cindy Shaw, did you have a comment on the first item on our agenda, which is the continuance for the proposed 30-bed residential memory care facility?
No, I do not. I'm just watching.
Perfect. That is all we have on this one.
Okay. The public record remains open. Do we have a motion from Commissioner regarding the continuance?
I'll make the motion to continue. I don't have the item number in front of me because we got you on the screen, but if you'll quote it.
The application number. Sorry. GLUA 2020 CU 2002 SP 2043.
Wow, a lot of numbers. I make that motion to continue it till date certain of December 14th?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Guile, seconded by Commissioner Schlagenhofer, I believe.
Yes.
To continue to December 14th. Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
Aye.
Commissioner Gage?
Aye.
Commissioner Stoll?
Aye.
Commissioner Staggs?
Aye.
And Chair Mitchell?
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to general business, item number 2 on the agenda, update to guidelines for transportation impact analysis. And I'm not sure who's up on that. It must be Ms. Turway.
Hello, how's everyone doing? Can you guys hear me okay?
Nope.
Is that Laura?
Yes.
Because I didn't see her on the screen.
All right. Okay, thank you. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about proposed amendments to our traffic impact analyses. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. John Rifflinger, our traffic engineer, who's our city consultant, is here to help answer any questions. We expect people to do traffic studies when they do development. And generally, these guidelines tell us how to create the study. And so a traffic impact analysis is a study that is created by an engineer, and it identifies how much traffic a development is going to have. So what's the impact of those traffic? How much is the development going to create? And what are the impacts of it to the adjacent road system? Is it going to put too many cars through an intersection to make it too busy? Are there site issues? Things like that. And so this is really a background document. It's not in code. It's been adopted by resolution. And so we're proposing to update it by resolution. It is just the methodology to how to create the study itself. So these traffic studies are prepared during a land use application. So in order to have a complete application, people will have to perform a study. So once we have the study and it is included in the land use application, then it goes out to the public for review. So internally, the planning division is the chief department that is supporting traffic reviews, although there is some input from our engineering division, and most of the work is done by John Ripplinger of Ripplinger and Associates, who's been our traffic engineer for more than 20 years. And so he's the one that will take a look inside the traffic models and do the work and communicate directly with the applicant's traffic engineer. And so an applicant does a study, Mr. Ripplinger reviews said study, and both of those documents go into the public record for development review, and then the community gets to provide comment on those as well. And then if there's a review body like the Planning Commission or City Commission, then those also get an opportunity to take a look at those studies. So there's two types of traffic studies that we have. One is a smaller study for smaller developments. So it has fewer things that you analyze. So if you're going to do a very small addition to a building, you may be less likely to impact a major intersection that we know has capacity left over. Whereas if you were to do a large development, you're probably going to have a pretty big impact on the city's transportation system. And so you'll need a much more detailed, lengthy study. Or if you do a small development that's near, say, Beaver Creek and 213 or something like that, within a problematic area, you may have to do the bigger, more detailed study in that case as well. So the guidelines, this is not a land use application form. Again, I just want to make sure that the Planning Commission is aware of what's happening. We created these guidelines in 1990. They were updated in 2005, and now we want to update them again. So it's been 15 years since they were last updated, and there's some things out of date. One of the big things out of date is that we adopted a transportation system plan, and the guidelines have old references to the old ones. So as you know, we made some changes in our code to deal with alternate mobility targets and how we look at mobility. And so all of those references needed to be updated. The transportation system goals were from the old TSP, not the current TSP. And in the current TSP, we have references to multimodal transportation, such as walking and biking and different ways to get around other than through a car. And so there's a reference added to that. Also, we wanted to add a revision to make clear when the guidelines apply. And so we added a specific exemption that they don't apply when you do an accessory dwelling unit or a lot line adjustment, because those really don't have a lot of traffic impacts. And we had never required them for those cases, so we were just making clear policy that we had already been implementing. A couple of the other cleanups are just a requirement that the engineer that performs the study is licensed in Oregon. So some things, again, that we have been implementing but were not codified within this or within the adopted standards. We had some requirements. They show driveway width and depth and spacing and site obstructions, and just kind of think about these things up front a little more. They're certainly part of the review with the code, but making sure that it's clear that those kind of things should be included, even though they, to extent, were included before as well. There is a requirement to go back and look a year further for crash history, and then a couple tweaks on not requiring checklists, making it optional, and then some other minor modifications. So for the most part, all of the changes that we're proposing are just, as we see them, a minor cleanup. We're not required to come before Planning Commission to show you those changes. We are anticipating a City Commission date of December 2nd. and then the city commission is going to review them through resolution. But I wanted to provide an opportunity for planning commission to provide input on these. Again, it's not the standards themselves. The standards that say how much traffic is too much traffic and all that is in our code. This is just how to put together the study. I am here to answer any questions. If the planning commission has any comments or anyone has any comments you want me to forward on to the city commission, I can certainly do that too. Or I recommend people come to the city commission on December 2nd and provide their input there too.
Laura,
That's all I have.
I have a
questions.
Yep.
Mr. Dow, go ahead.
Laura and John, you both seen me for 17 years questioning your reports on traffic, and especially around developments. This has nothing to do with maybe the code, but this is, I've only got a month to go or only 2 meetings to go, so this might be an appropriate time to ask the question. I'm not alone, and I don't, with all due respect, I'm not alone, the only person in the city who has questioned every time there's been a report about development and how you come up with the numbers. And I keep wondering, isn't there an easier way or a better way to explain to us, the public, when you come before the city commission or planning commission and say, this is not going to impact this, or it's not going to be that much traffic? I know that there's a formulas that you kind of use, but that doesn't explain to a lot of us how these things come about, where the citizens come in and say, this is going to be incredible to traffic, and I've seen the results. Sometimes it's bad, yet you always come up with numbers that are different. And I'm just wondering, how do you develop, Laura or John, these kind of numbers that you present before citizens? Because they're always upset. Can you explain that a little bit better?
I'll let John answer that, but before, just one quick thing is I think you're touching on sort of 2 different topics. One is an expectation of the community, and then the 2 is the numbers. I think it's kind of hard for some people to know what is a 0.99 standard V over C feel like.
Well, Laura, I agree, Laura.
There's a little bit of a...
I agree, Laura, but it's just after being on this commission now for 8 years, I've never seen a satisfactory response to the public when they've asked questions. I know that tonight you were talking about codes, but this is maybe my last chance to ask John as a commissioner, and you, because we've all seen the results. The citizens question these because they see the results of it, and the results don't always match up to what is presented to the city or planning commission. It's sometimes worse, maybe not always, but I'm just wondering, how can statistics that estimate or guesstimate something come out and satisfy the public? I mean, because those are just figures like if I went to Las Vegas and guesstimated when I was going to win. How do those numbers really show the public that they're being listened to? Do you follow what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, perhaps John can talk about some of the methodology for creating that, but I don't think that really answers your question, which is sort of the disconnect between an expectation and then these studies, right? That's
true. That's a good way of putting it, the disconnect between the two. And again, I know it has nothing to do with what you just presented, but this is my last time probably to even ask John that kind of a question, because it's going to impact me in the future. We've got a lot of development in this city, Park Place, Thimble Creek, South End, and you're going to repeatedly have citizens come in and ask those same questions, and they never get the answer they're looking for. Not that they expect it to be perfect, but they all know they live with the results of traffic. And anyway, I've said enough. John? I drove him away.
Okay, well, I was waiting for the mute to go off. I think Laura stated it very well. It's a difference between the expectations and the code. I mean, when you first started on the planning commission, Tom, and when I first started, we had a lot less traffic in Oregon City. And we made a decision, I mean, we collectively, blessed by the city commission and by Metro, that rather than spend lots more money on transportation network, we would accept a higher level of congestion because of the price tag. And we adopted, that is, the city of Oregon City adopted through its transportation system plan, a performance standard. And the first one that we worked with, Tom, was the old one. We subsequently updated it and made an affirmative decision with the adoption of the latest TSP that we would accept even more congestion, mostly because of the cost of implementing transportation improvements. So you're absolutely correct. We have people who are hoping for a better free flow condition for traffic in Oregon City than they're going to get. But what we do is we have standards, we apply those standards, we require developers to abide by conditions of approval. Sometimes those are pretty onerous in terms of requiring a developer to build a traffic lane, to build a signal, as well as contributing toward the system's development charges. We have a long record, a long history of doing that in Oregon City and throughout the state of Oregon. And I'm confident that we are doing it properly and appropriately based upon the expectations that have been defined in city code and regional planning documents.
But John,
the best we can do.
John, doesn't that congestion issue, and when the public hears that, doesn't that drive people away from wanting to live in Oregon City? Because, well, look, they're not doing anything about congestion, and it's only getting worse because they're developing in every section of the city, and they're just adding to the traffic problem. Doesn't that congestion become an issue for those who want to even live and work in Oregon City? I think somebody earlier tonight said people are moving out of Oregon City, going to Cambria or whatever. That's a different issue, but still it's true that congestion in Oregon City is getting worse because of all the development. And yet the public comes in and says something, and I keep thinking they feel misled that everybody says, well, it meets our standards. But our standards, as you said, pointed out, are more about congestion, that we have to allow so much congestion. But taxpayers don't like that idea of, look, he just said we're going to get more congestion and there's nothing they can do about it. Does that mean we have to tell them, if you want to pay more in taxes, then you can have better roads? Or what's the solution, John, is what I'm asking.
Well, I think the solution is that people have to judge for themselves whether the attributes, the advantages they have of being in Oregon City with the, things like the library, things like the cultural activities, the shopping opportunities, whether those balance for them to make this a desirable community in which to live. If they don't care about some of those things, they may move to a small community that doesn't have them and has less traffic and less congestion as a result. I think that Oregon City is doing very, very well in terms of creating that balance with providing services to the transportation services to the residents and the businesses in the city that are imposed upon the city residents through taxes, through developers, through the system's development charges. I mean, it's always a balancing issue. I mean, I've worked all over the state and in other states during my career. And I can tell you that there are some communities in which if the motorist sees another vehicle at the intersection, they view it to be congested. So it's a matter of expectations.
Wow. In the beginning, I almost felt like I heard you say as a citizen that, well, if you don't like it the way it is here, with the libraries and all that, you can just move away where the traffic's not so bad. I know that's not what you meant, but that's just almost what I heard there as a citizen, Mike. But I appreciate John.
Yeah, and I just wanted the comprehensive plan, our guiding document also talks about these balance. Should we provide more housing opportunities? With that comes more congestion. So we do have a lot of things, environmental protections, efficient use of land. There's a lot of things that we have to balance as a city in the comprehensive plan. If people want to talk more about traffic and about these larger fundamental balancing of those, it's a pretty good time to do that. So I should plug OC2040.com.
One other thing I might say, and I'm sure Mike will address this. I know Mike addressed some issues last week at the City Commission, but somewhere down the road, whether it involves John or you, Laura, or somebody, we're going to need to discuss the emergency exit plan for Oregon City. During the fire and smoke, it took an hour to get off Winston Drive onto Holcomb Boulevard. Every road in Oregon City, Redland, Holcomb, Abernathy, everything was you couldn't move. It was solid, backed up. And if we do have a major emergency, earthquake slides in the city, I'm hoping that the city is going to develop a plan of emergency exits or how they get out of here. I mean, I know Seaside and the coast has them to get to higher ground, but I'm hoping Oregon City and whoever department that handles that will look into that in the future. Again, since I'm almost gone, somebody needs to approach that and bring it up to whatever body will help think about a plan to help in the next emergency we have. Just a thought.
Am I, as a citizen, allowed to make a comment right here? Or is this just for the commissioners?
Well, no, this is, we're always welcome to hear from citizens. Just please keep it brief.
I will. I just want to comment on the last comment. I live 6 houses from South End, the intersection of South End and Warner Parrott, and it took me 45 minutes to get down off the hill during the fire evacuation. So yeah. I know people don't like one car. They might think one car at an intersection is congestion, but when that line stretches from South End, the intersection of Warner Parrott and South End, all the way back to Parrott in the morning, that is congestion. That's all I'll say.
Thanks for letting me comment, Mike, and Laura, and John.
Okay, yeah, you bet. I'm going to make a comment. I'll get on my soapbox. I'll try to be brief. Anytime John presents numbers, any development, that there's going to be additional traffic, just about any development that's going to happen. I think we need to remember the difference between mobility and accessibility. And what I mean by that, Karen and I moved to Oregon City 12 years ago, and I could drive downtown anytime I wanted to, no traffic at all, park wherever I wanted to, but there was nowhere to go. Well, now, it may take me a while. I may have to sit at a stop sign for a minute. I may have to go around the block parking lot, but nice restaurants are accessible in my hometown. I don't have to drive to Lake Oswego or downtown Portland or Northwest or wherever it is because of development, because of new business, that stuff is accessible in my hometown now. So it may take me a little longer to get there, but I don't have to go nearly as far to get to what I want to have in my city. And I would much rather have it available local, support local business, and not have to drive somewhere else, for those kind of things. And yeah, it does mean some more traffic, but the services and the businesses that I'm looking for are more accessible to me. So
Mike,
stop on that.
Mike, just to add to that, on Oregon City Chit Chat and a lot of things, I've always complained about the fact that we don't get any Oregon City residents downtown. I mainly get them from Waukee and Gladstone, Canby, West Lynn. And every time we hear from Oregon City residents, yes, you have restaurants downtown, but the retail is getting slimmer and slimmer. Retail is giving up. And I mean, Christmas at the Zoo's leaving. I mean, a lot of people are just leaving downtown because people say they can't find parking spots downtown. It's too hard. You just said the opposite. You said it's nice to have that down there. But a lot of people don't even bother to come downtown anymore. And that's what you heard on Chit Chat all the time because there's just no parking. There's just no way. You have to drive around and around and around. So there's two sides to that story, Mike, is what I was getting at.
Sure.
We're losing retail down there.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, thanks.
Two sides.
Sorry.
It's always a balance.
Yep.
Okay, so let's try to move it back onto the, are there any questions from other commissioners, questions or comments on what Laura's presented?
Yeah, well, one quick thing, Mike.
Okay, Commissioner Slotnick.
Yeah, thank you. As far as the emergency exit plan, I don't know how much we want to talk about that, but I kind of liken that to trying to, you know, flush every toilet in the city at the same time. It's just one of those occurrences that doesn't happen very often. I don't think it's possible to evacuate everybody at the same time without having infrastructure that would be, you know, insane every other day of the year.
Well, I was just saying we need a plan.
Well,
in the future, we can't.
Commissioner Stoll, did you have something?
We can't have the.
Yeah, I just had a question. All the traffic analysis we see are based off of, you know, some sort of a factor. A single family house generates X number of trips and so on. Is there a method for an applicant to show an actual traffic pattern as opposed to the theoretical, you know, number of factors per 1,000 square feet or whatever the math says, to say, hey, look, we have 10 employees. They're going to be, you know, coming in at this time. They're going to be leaving at this time. We'll have 3 deliveries a day and so on. Is there a method or a procedure in place for an applicant to say, this is what is actually going to be based on our operations?
Thank you, Greg. That was better stated than my question.
Yes, there is. The short answer is yes, there is the opportunity for an applicant to present alternative data. And we have, I would say we probably accept alternative data 2 or 3 times per year on land use applications. So it's not very frequent, but it's frequent enough that we can point to a record of having accepted it.
Is that usually their numbers are less than what the theoretical math would have said?
That's my point.
Like they're showing that they have a lower traffic impact.
Opportunity to present it, but they never do. Good point, Greg.
Yes, that's correct. Usually it's something lower.
Cool. Thank you.
Milner did a
Any other questions from commissioners?
Parking lot.
I've got a couple, Laura. Can you go back to your first slide on proposed revisions? Yeah, the last one there, ADUs and lot line adjustments. What about internal conversions? Were they not put on an exemption on purpose, or was it an oversight?
John, you want to take that? I don't quite recall.
I think in most cases, internal conversions do not result in any kind of a traffic analysis. I think there's a possibility that there might be some kind of an internal conversion that would be drastic enough that we would think a study would be required. But I think if you're talking about kind of an internal conversion of a single family residence or something like that, there probably would not be any kind of analysis.
Mike, I have a follow-up.
So it shouldn't, but we don't want to put it on here as an exemption, that those are exempt from having to do the study automatically? Or do we want to have the...